Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to you and the entire planet from the beautiful, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. You know, my friends, Reading with Your Kids is more than just a podcast. It's a movement. Our mission is to help families grow closer, stronger, and kinder through the magic of reading together. And we are absolutely thrilled and honored to have you with us on that journey. Please help us spread the word about the podcast by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Really excited to welcome back Shannon Stocker. She is here to celebrate her new YA title. It's called The Roach King of Raleigh. And since May is Mental Illness Awareness Month, later in the show, I'll have a listen back to a conversation we had with Dr. Monica Schott, celebrating her book, My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog, Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. My friends, I am so excited. One of my favorite guests, I just realized I've like all these favorite guests, but they really are. I have so much fun speaking to them, and particularly our guest today. She is the author of The Roach King of Raleigh, or Raleigh. Anyways, it's a new YA title from our guest, Shannon Stocker. Shannon, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm awesome. I'm so excited to be back. I love that you have tons of favorite authors. How could you not? Authors are good people.
They are good people. I feel so blessed. I'm able to have these great conversations with very, as we would say here in Boston, wicked smart people. And I hope you're ready for your daughter to come back with a Boston accent, by the way.
For sure.
I get to have these, and they're not just, hey, how are you? Nice to see you. We sit down and we talk about some very, very deep, heavy, fun conversations. And, I just feel so lucky. I would do this for free. I am doing this for free. Anyways, tell us about the Roach King of Raleigh.
Oh my gosh, I've missed you. The Roach King of Raleigh is, first of all, it was just named a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard Selection. I'm so excited about that. This book is so special to me. It's kind of like saying that you have a favorite author. I mean, I guess all your book babies are ones that you love, but this book is special to me because it comes from a place of honesty and a place of truth and a place of hardship, which most of my books do in some capacity or another, because that's the kind of life that I've lived in many ways. And yet I bring a lot of joy from my experiences, and I try to put that into my book as well. So it's about a boy named Quill, who is a sophomore in high school, who has been through the ringer. He has been through some tough times, and he has lost a lot. His best friend has moved. His dad is struggling with alcoholism. His mom, he and his mom have just had to have lost their house, and they've had to move into a rental home that is owned by his enemy's father. And he is tired of it and kind of at a place where he's just done, and he doesn't want to let anybody in, and he doesn't think he needs friends, and he doesn't shed tears anymore, and he's just kind of closed off. And he gets this bearded dragon and realizes that bearded dragons eat something called dubia roaches, which are very expensive. Dubias are very nutritious for beardies, but they are very, very expensive. And he ends up finding a secret room that is hidden off, like an attic space, that is hidden in his closet. And he decides that he's going to start breeding roaches for his local pet store in order to help save money and get them out of their rental house. And there are all kinds of problems with this, of course, because, right, nothing wrong is ever going to happen when it involves thousands of secret insects. But his mom doesn't want him working. His dad is a huge part of this story. There are a couple classmates who are a huge part of this story. You know that disability writing is very important to me. And one of those main characters has Tourette syndrome, which is important to me. A dear friend of mine who no longer is here with us on this earth had Tourette. And so he's kind of my tip of the hat to my friend, my dear friend Fran. But also for representation purposes. There's a lot of misunderstanding about Tourette syndrome. And so chess is a big theme in this book. Animals always with me. The addiction that he is having to deal with, but really the roaches that serve as this metaphor for the dark things in life that kind of loom under the floorboards of our existence, but are going to find their way out into the light eventually. And how we accept those things, how we move our way through these kind of traumas, whether they are something that we ourselves have gone through or something that people we know and love have gone through. And that was an important distinction to me in writing this book, because my first book, Stronger at the Seams, was about this girl who's been through a trauma. And I wrote that after watching my daughter go through medical hardship for 2 years. But my son went through the ringer too, just watching my daughter go through it. And I really wanted to also honor that difficulty. What's it like to be a boy who still you have all these expectations of you, just as girls do, who is expected in many ways sometimes not to feel things. It's okay to be a boy and feel. It's necessary. We all have feelings. You can't not have them. The question is, how are you dealing with them? And so that's this book. It's special. Well, I'm going to stop talking because I've talked a lot. Good question.
Well, you bring up a lot of different things. First off, being a sophomore in high school is possibly one of the most challenging things in the world. You're not the new guys on campus. You don't get that new kid pass. You're not a big man on campus, but you're just kind of there, and you're at a time in your life where your body is changing in incredible ways. You think that all of your friends have it all together and they all know what's going on. Meanwhile, you don't realize that none of you guys know anything that's going on. It's tough.
Oh, absolutely. And Quill's a late bloomer too, on top of it. So to be a late bloomer as a sophomore in high school is a painful thing because you have other people who have sprouted up and their voices have dropped and that's not Quill yet. He's kind of going through that process in the course of the book, but that brings with it its own little batch of insecurities. So when you add a change in socioeconomic status and all these other issues to it, his brother's gone off for college. It's a lot to handle for anybody to handle. But yeah, at 15, 16, that's tough.
I imagine too, I don't know how far you get into this, but you were mentioning that the dad struggles with alcohol and that means the family struggles with alcohol. And I'm imagining that Quill's older sibling going off to college, maybe that sibling was actually helping and being a buffer. And now that sibling's gone off, there's even more of this alcohol stuff I have to deal with. And I'm only 15.
It's exactly what it is. That's exactly what happens. And so it's one of the reasons that he's so angry at his brother and his anger toward his brother is a huge part of this plot. So I can't talk about it too much, because it's so important, but you're right. That was exactly it. He was a buffer. And then when he's gone, that buffer is gone too. And so the drinking gets worse. The buffer is gone. And there's always that sibling dynamic, it's an important one. It's a precious one. And it's a very, very difficult one at this age, because scientifically speaking, your amygdala is just not developed yet. You're still trying to figure it all out, but there's so much egocentrism at this age that it's impossible not to feel like you are alone and the world is against you when things like that happen.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're speaking, I'm thinking, wow, 15, 16, that's when you start to notice, well, I guess it's earlier these days, but that's when maybe you start dating and whatnot. But it sounds like Quill's not, oh, no one will go out with me. So I'm just going to be even creepier and weirder and to make sure that no one goes out with me. Is that kind of what he's thinking too?
I think because he's a little delayed in his development, it's something that is starting to cross his mind, and it's feelings that he's starting to have and interest that's there that he's having a hard time putting his finger on because it is butting up against this I don't want to care about anybody kind of thing. So for him, it's more of a denial space, because he's been through trauma. So that's the self-protection. He's just really shut himself down.
Yeah, that's, boy, lots of kids going through this. Was there a kid in your life that inspired this, or maybe somebody that you grew up with or somebody that you knew?
It's funny because my son is my squish. My son is my one he's so, so, so sweet. And my daughter's very, very logical. You've met Cassidy, so you know that. Just, I mean, she thinks everything through, and she's the one that, if anything, she shuts things down. So Quill is kind of this combination of my kids, and in a lot of ways, I don't even think my brother knows this, but in a lot of ways, sort of my brother, with remembering how my brother dealt with things. But yet Quill is the younger sibling. My brother's the older sibling. And so there are also pieces of me in him because I'm remembering how I felt when my brother left. And so I pulled all these different pieces of my experience, my kids' experiences, my brother's experience, because we had a very difficult childhood, and really put them into Quill in order to be able to kind of capture that initial space that I think is so universal with kids who are going through hard times. And who is 15 and 16 and hasn't been through some kind of a hard time? Maybe your dad's not an alcoholic. Maybe you haven't, had to lose your house, but people go through hard things, and everybody thinks they're alone at that age. And you're not.
Yeah. There's this, I keep hearing that, there are young kids that are struggling with anxiety, now, which we never heard of before. I'm imagining that if our youngest kids are suddenly struggling with anxiety at a much greater level, kids in high school have always kind of struggled with that. That must be through the roof.
Oh my gosh, so bad right now. Anxiety, just I think in general, what I see from my kids and from their friends, it's huge. Cassidy has a brain tumor. We were just in the ER last week because she's having issues with resting tachycardia. So her resting heart rate being up in the hundreds right now. Now, how much of that could be a problem from chemo? How much of that might be autonomic dysfunction because she still has a brain tumor? How much of that could be stress? I don't know. But you know what? We're going to the cardiologist tomorrow because the ER didn't want to take any risks with her. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge part of life. And this isn't just my kid with a brain tumor. This is pretty much all of them. And it includes my son as well. So those anxieties, I think that it's important that they come out. And I think it's important that kids find some kind of outlet to deal with it too, which is part of what I think one of the reasons that Quill gets involved with the roaches too. It's this thing to keep him busy and distracted. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we did when Cassidy was in chemo, was breed roaches to help pay for expenses.
Wow. Okay, we just went down a rabbit hole. I didn't expect to go down. How does one get into roach breeding?
One marries somebody crazy. That's what they do. So,
are you speaking about your husband marrying you? Or?
I am speaking about my beloved. Yes. So it was COVID. So the world was shut down. Cassidy was diagnosed. My husband's company shut down out of the middle of nowhere. And we were forced with the decision at that point, do we put him back on the road, traveling in a new job, which would require a lot of travel because new jobs always do. That's while our daughter is on chemo and immunocompromised, or do we find a way to keep the family together, not travel, knowing that in the end, this is going to cost us our house and our savings. Mm-hmm. And we're a very tight-knit family. And so for us, there was one choice. Our daughter got the service dog. Our son got a bearded dragon. And, I should say had a bearded dragon. But these roaches are extremely expensive that they eat. Dubia roaches are very expensive. And so my husband said, well, we can just breed our own colony. And that would save us, $100 or more a month. It's expensive. Wow. And, for when they're younger, when the bearded dragons are younger, they eat even more of these roaches. So it can be a couple $100 a month. Wow. So he was at the pet store and, they found out that we were breeding and offered to buy some of our roaches. And my husband came home and said, hey, guess what? The pet store, we were talking and this is what they would like to do. This is how much they would pay us. And I was like, I just want no part of this. Oh, of course not. Of course, you'll never see them. You'll never know. We have one colony, became 2, became 5, became 14. And before I knew it, we had 200,000 roaches in our basement. And we were supplying roaches to 15 local feeder supply locations. And so And of course, you have a business that big, the whole family was involved. And there was one time I'm literally elbow deep in roaches at this point because you have to separate the females and the males and separate them by size and everything. And I just looked at him and I was like, one day I'm getting a book out of this. That's all I can say. One day I am going to get a book out of this. And the roaches are gone. We don't have them. We sold our business, but it was called Roaches for Ribbons. And we gave 10% of the proceeds to kids with cancer.
Oh, that's incredible. I'm curious. Every story kind of starts with an idea, but you don't know if it's going to work. You start, you're playing with characters. What does it feel like when you get to the point in creating the story when you go, this is going to work. This is going. Talk about how you know that and what it feels like when it's like going, I got it. This is it.
I think it's different for every single book, but for this one, I just had this concept because this is what we did. And it was every single person that we would tell that we were breeding roaches, their jaws would hit the floor. And I was like, I know this is a book. I know this is a book because it's not something anybody else is going to write because people hate bugs by and large. I'm huge on symbolism and metaphors. I loved that. So I felt like this was going to work from day one. And I was actually, when I was talking with the idea with my critique partners, it was one of my critique partners, and I mentioned chess and blah, blah, blah. And she's the one, I think, who said, the Roach King of Raleigh. And I was like, that's it. That's so, and actually I think it started off as the Roach King of Cleveland because I was born and raised in Cleveland, but I did live in Raleigh for 3 years. But the climate isn't right to have a secret roach business in an attic in Cleveland. It is right in Raleigh. So that's why I moved it because I wanted to keep the alliteration. King, Cleveland, Roach, Raleigh, still had it. But when I write my outlines, and I write very detailed outlines, like 10, 12,000 word outlines. So when I write an outline, that's when I start really getting excited because I can't wait to sit down and write a book, because I love where the outline goes, and it always changes because I don't think I ever get to know my characters anyway until I'm finished with the first draft. When I'm done with the first draft, that's when I'm like, now I understand why they do things. I know everything about their backgrounds. I know what they keep in their pockets. You know everything about them by the time the book is finished. But this one, I felt like I had a better sense of who these guys, all of them, who they were before the book even started.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is that I get to talk to illustrators and authors about their creative process. It's all very different and also very, very cool.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. There isn't a right way. There isn't a wrong way. I remember before I wrote my first book, going to intensives at SCBWI conferences and hearing from like Linda Mullally Hunt about her process. What did she do to write Fish in a Tree? And taking, notes, just copious notes, writing everything down and thinking, this is exactly what I have to do. What works for her doesn't necessarily work for me. And I've found a way that works for me. And that's when it kind of clicks, it's not going to work for everybody because our brains, thankfully, are all different. We're all very different people and we all think differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Because as you know, we really encourage our listeners to read with their kids, even when they're sophomores in high school.
Yep.
You're not going to curl up on the couch maybe and read Roach King of Raleigh aloud, but you can co-read and come together and then talk about the book on the way to chemo or dance or whatever it is and have some deep conversation. What kind of conversations can you imagine families having as they're reading Roach King of Raleigh?
So I would want kids to talk about when he's being honest and when he's not, and why. What good comes from the lies that he tells? What trouble does he get into because of the lies that he tells, both to other people and to himself? I think you can learn a lot about somebody based on their secrets and why they're keeping those secrets. Because it's not always about wanting to deceive somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes it's about just not being able to face the truth.
Right.
So I think that would probably be my number one wish, is that people could really talk about that. I love the dynamic between Harley, Zuri, and Quill, our main character. The dynamic between the three of them. There's these twins, Harley and Zuri, and Quill, who have a lot of complicated pieces going on there. And then there's an older character named Mr. Dave, who is very important in this book. And Mr. Dave kind of speaks in riddles, and it's some of the things that he says are just, I think there's a lot of depth there. And I did a lot of thinking about the things that Mr. Dave says, like, some flowers need a drink more than most. Just little things like that, his little riddles that he tells, talking about those and what they mean to different people, because they can mean different things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Roach King of Raleigh and find out more about you.
I can go to my website at www.shannonstocker.com. You can get a signed copy of Roach King of Raleigh from either Quail Ridge Books in Raleigh or from Carmichael's in Louisville. And you can find me on Instagram on @ShannonStocker_ or Blue Sky. And I have a picture book coming out in December, so you can find that information about that as well. That's coming out from Simon & Schuster, and it's a rhyming joy of a book called Get a Hug. I have an F and G here. I don't know if you can see it. Hang on, I'm going to turn my blur off. But illustrated by Lily Wang Zhu. That's just the cutest thing ever.
Awesome.
And it was edited by Celia Lee. I love it. Love it, love it.
Well, don't talk too much about the book because we want you back in the fall.
I would love to come back in the fall.
That. Awesome. Hey, and before we go, let's give Cassidy's charity a plug.
Yes, because she has a website now.
Okay.
So it's Gifts for Gold. Cassidy's charity is now a legal nonprofit, a formal 501c3. She raises money for kids and families of kids with cancer to bring them joy. So sometimes it's bringing things to Child Life at hospitals. If they need like neck pillows, or if kids need squishmallows, because those are things that they can send home as siblings, or gift cards, or sometimes it's the Ronald McDonald House. Sometimes it's books, whatever. Sometimes it's an individual family. We had a friend whose daughter relapsed with brain cancer, and she passed away a little over a year ago at the age of 11. And 2 months before she passed away, her nonprofit created these gift baskets, one for each of the siblings, one for Caroline, and then they presented the parents with a $5,000 check, just to help them get through, because it's so hard. So she has a website at giftsforgold.org, I believe is what it is now. I hope I didn't get that wrong, Cassidy.
I think you're right.
Okay, good. And so she made the website, and she does the upkeep for it. So, I think some of the kids in the club are now helping with the upkeep, but she made it.
That's fantastic. Well, let her know. Tell Cassidy, send me a script for a PSA, and we'll run it here on the podcast. In the meantime, everybody, check out The Roach King of Raleigh. It's the new YA title from our guest, Shannon Stocker. Hey, Shannon, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you always for having me, Jed. I appreciate you.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Atmosphere Press. Have you been dreaming about publishing a children's book, one that sparks imagination, creates bedtime memories, and maybe even becomes part of a family's story for years to come? The truth is, great ideas deserve more than a file sitting on your laptop. They deserve to become real books, beautifully designed, professionally published, and ready to reach young readers everywhere. At Atmosphere Press, you get expert guidance through every step of the journey, from editing and illustration to design, distribution, and marketing. So your book doesn't just get published, it gets positioned for success. Whether it's your first picture book, a middle grade adventure, or the story you've been carrying for years, now's the time to bring it to life. Visit atmospherepress.com to send in your manuscript and see what your book could become. That's atmospherepress.com, where your book can go above and beyond even your wildest dreams. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Melbourne in Australia. Our guest is here today to celebrate. I love the title of this book. The name of the book is My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever. Please welcome to the show Dr. Monica Shy. Dr. Monica, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm well, thank you. Bit fresh in Melbourne, but I'm well.
I hear, I was talking to Dr. Monica beforehand. My chosen daughter, Jing Jing, is now a citizen of Melbourne. She just moved, and Dr. Monica was telling me that she moved at I don't know if the best time or the worst time. It's really cold and windy and raw in Melbourne right now.
Yes, coming from Brisbane, I'm sure she would have had a bit of a shock.
Well, I'm sure that she is going to love living in your community. She wanted to live in a bigger, she said Brisbane was too small. It felt like a small town. And that Melbourne, she's really looking forward to the new start that she's going to have in Melbourne. But enough about my family. Let's talk about your book. My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever. Tell us all about this book.
So it's a kid's book. It's a chapter book. But I have to say that since its release, a lot of adults are reading it, and the comments coming from them are basically, it's the kid's book that every adult should read. And so it's a story about a child who sets out to build a cubby house with its father. And along the way, the father becomes unwell. And so the story is about that, but the father's mental health aligns with the building of the cubby, because the cubby grows wackier as the dad becomes more unwell. But it also aligns with the changing weather and the emotions that are running through the story. And so you kind of end up with this really nice flow of the story about the dad and the child, but also the weather and how it begins sunny and then the clouds brew and then the storm comes in and then it clears and, the family are quite settled and the father is back to some good health.
There's so many things that jump through my mind as you're describing the book, and there's a part of me that is thinking, for somebody listening out there thinking, oh, why do we have to talk to kids about mental health, and they should be happy and not have to worry about all this stuff? But as somebody who grew up with a dad who had very serious mental health issues, I probably could have used a book like this. But of course, when I grew up almost 100 years ago, no one talked about it. In fact, when my dad was hospitalized for a number of years, it was, where's Dad? He's in the hospital. What's wrong? Break his leg, have a pneumonia, whatever. He'll be home soon. And then he wasn't, and wasn't talked about at all.
No. And that's really what got me to write the book, it was about 13, 14 years ago that my young children at the time were seeing their father become depressed, and they were 8 and 9 at the time, and they had experience with my brother, who ever since they were born and they could remember, they'd seen him really quite unwell with schizophrenia, depression, and severe paranoia. And so when they saw their father unwell, and you know, like you just said, there's no broken leg or broken arm. You can't see anything unwell. But they knew something wasn't right. And so I had to sit down and tell them what was going on, and I had to explain it to them honestly, because, you know, I think children understand far more than what we give them credit for sometimes. And so I had to explain it to them honestly, but in a way that made sense to them. And with my brother, we'd spent so many years going to family classes, understanding his mental health. So we had a bit of background on what was going on with the brain. And so as a parent back then, I was always looking for books to help me explain things to my kids. And so I went looking for a book to help me explain what was going on around their father's mental health, and I couldn't find anything. So anyway, after I got through explaining to my boys what was happening to their father, you know, over a period of time, I decided to write my own book, because I knew that I couldn't be the only person out there that needed such a resource. And, you know, kids deserve honesty, I suppose, and to help them understand what's going on with their parents, because like you said, you can't see anything wrong with the brain, but you know something's not right either.
It is, and there's so much mental health, and the way it affects families is so complex. And, you know, there's a lot of hurt involved, and a lot of anger, and a lot of confusion, and there's nothing that can necessarily take away the hurt or the pain. But if we can deal with some of the confusion and help our kids, certainly it would have helped me if I understood a little bit more about what was going on with my dad. It would have helped me have a little bit more empathy for him, and instead of just anger, I'm sure the anger would still have been there. But it would have been like, yeah, I don't like what happened. It really shouldn't have happened, and it's wrong, and it can't happen again, but it's not totally his fault.
No, that's exactly right. And I think what I've seen in my children is that, you know, like I said, they've grown up with my brother's mental ill health, and they've grown to be really quite patient and understanding, and they have developed this empathy that has made them really quite beautiful men, with such gentle understanding. And, you know, when I was telling them as little boys that their father was unwell, and I went to talk about the brain, because and the science around that, and the chemical imbalance that was going on in the brain, and how our brains need to be chemically balanced. And in the book I talk about that, and I related to, I don't know if you remember this or any of your listeners remember this, but as kids we would make a paper mache volcano, and inside the volcano we would have bicarb of soda, and you pour vinegar in, and then you have this explosion coming out through the top of your paper mache volcano. And so I use that analogy in the book for kids, because I think they can understand that. And it's not really about the explosion, it's about getting the right amount of chemicals, which in the volcano experiment is the bicarb and the vinegar, so that you have the desired effect. And so relating that to the brain, and how, you know, if you don't have the right amount of chemicals supporting each other and going on at the right time, well, then there's an imbalance, and the result is the behaviours that you can see in someone who doesn't have good mental health.
Right. Yeah. there's so much, as we're talking about and acknowledging, we didn't talk about this at all when I was a kid. We're talking about it now, but even so, there still aren't a lot of books out there, and we still don't talk a lot about it. Maybe a family that's experiencing it, hopefully, someone in the family will be able to start a conversation, and those conversations can happen. But outside of a family that's directly dealing with mental health, I don't think there's a lot of conversations going on. We talk about cancer, and we raise money for cancer research, and everybody knows somebody who's experienced a broken leg or a broken wrist. But we still, if we're blessed to be in a family that's not experiencing mental illness, I don't think we have those conversations. And I don't know. I think it could be helpful overall for our society if we did start having some conversations as a society.
Yeah. Look, I agree. And I mean, when I wrote the book, I started writing the book 13 years ago. So probably 10 years ago, the book was, ready and going out to commercial publishers, and it was being knocked back, and publishers were saying, oh, it's a, great story, but, I'm not really sure that the market's ready for this kind of a story. And then, we launched the book in July this year, and I had, I'm not sure whether listeners are aware, Professor Pat McGorry, who is internationally renowned for his work in mental health for young people. So he works out of the University of Melbourne and does a lot of research around it. And he came to launch the book, and even at the launch, he was saying, we need more of this stuff, more of these books. And, 20 years ago, there was no way known we could have this kind of a book in the marketplace, and people weren't discussing mental health. And even though the stigma is still there, it is starting to be broken down. I think it has a long way to go still, but, in Australia, there is a lot of work going on in workplaces, for example, with mental health first aiders. There are mental health programs running throughout Australia to celebrate good mental health and support people who are struggling with their mental health. So, Pat was saying, even though we are talking more about it now, and although our COVID lockdowns had something to do with that, people were starting to understand a little bit more about mental health, there is still some way to go. But it is important for this kind of a book to be shared between adult and child. And, I think I said to you earlier before we started that the really interesting thing is that a lot of adults are reading the book for themselves, for their own mental health, and they are saying how much it's helping them. Women who have suffered postnatal depression. The book's being used by Lifeline. It's being used in schools by teachers with their classes. So, and a lot of people are now saying, it's the kids' book that every adult should be reading. So that's really heartwarming for me and really positive, and I never imagined that the story would affect people in that kind of a way. But obviously I'm thrilled, and that's what I've always hoped for.
Yeah. It is wonderful that it is reaching such a great audience. I'm wondering, I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you about this, but where did you find the inspiration, the resilience to keep on plugging? You're talking about 15 years ago, you started sharing the book, and people were like going, nah, we're not ready for this, and go away, and no one's going to talk. We're not going to buy this book. No one's going to buy this book. But you kept at it, and it must have been difficult. Where did you find the resiliency to keep at it?
If you ask my mum, she'd probably say I've got a hard head. Because I sincerely believed that we need to break down the stigma. I could see people talking about my brother, and I could see the conversations that weren't being had either. Like, it was really interesting, and a lot of people are scared of the behaviours that are coming out of poor mental health. And I mean, I was one of them. I was scared of my brother to begin with until I really got to understand it. And so what's kept me going is that I really believe that we need to break down the stigma around mental health. And I think, you know, the huge statistics that are being thrown around now about, you know, I've got some here globally, 2021, 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds experience mental health disorder around the world. Wow. You know, those statistics are huge and they're growing, you know, and so if we can start to give some understanding to kids, surely that will help them to manage their own mental health, to become healthier adults, and to help and be more considerate of people who are experiencing poor mental health. So I just really believe it, and I just didn't want to give up on that, and I still don't.
Well, I'm delighted that you kept on going. We talk here on the podcast a lot about the importance of representation and how valuable it is for kids to be able to see themselves or their families on the pages of books portrayed positively. And I truly believe that. But I think it is just as important, as we were touching on earlier, for kids who aren't in a particular book to be able to see others, again, portrayed positively. So, you know, for a kid to be able to see a person of a different culture or different race, a person who, you know, it's so valuable, I think, for a kid to be able to look in and see the pain and the challenges that a family with a person who is suffering from mental health issues has to go through. And what a much better place it would be for everybody if those kids who were blessed to be in a mentally healthy family could develop empathy for their classmates, because every kid is in a class, and there's a kid in every classroom that is dealing with some sort of mental illness, whether it's themselves, a family member, or dad, mother, and uncle. It's out there, and
yeah, it is.
Yeah, we don't know about it because we still don't talk about it.
No, that's right, and I think it's more so that it's rare that someone isn't touched by a mental health story in some kind of a way. You know, when I since launching the book, I'm so surprised at the amount of people that still come to me and say, you know, this book has touched me in such a way. And, you know, I hear from a teacher in one of the schools that's using it, and how, you know, it's explored in the classroom through various ways, and because we develop teachers' resources to go with the book. And so the teachers are using those resources to explore the book in class, and then the kids go away and interpret what they've been reading, and the work that they're producing is just amazing, because they really are understanding the struggles of someone who is experiencing mental health. And so the empathy is coming through their work, which, you know, that's just so beautiful. I mean, you can't really hope for anything more. And then I look at the other extreme. You know, I was in a classroom the other week where this particular classroom is for kids who are just about lost to the education system at primary school level. So when I say primary school level, that's up to 12 years old. And some of these kids are nearly lost in the education system, and they go to this school to try and reintegrate them or integrate them back into the classroom. And I mean, it's a long process. It's a whole year to do this, but, you know, looking in their classroom, they have this huge wall that talks about all the different emotions and the understanding around good mental health. And when I saw that, I was just so touched, because it aligns so beautifully with the emotions that run through the story of my cubby book. And so the empathy, I think, is being developed. It's just a slow process, I think.
You know, I'm so happy that you mentioned that there are so many adults coming to you saying that this book helped them. And, you know, I've read a fair amount of books aimed at adults, trying to help them deal with different, understanding different mental illnesses and self-help books and everything. And I got to tell you, it's a slog. Most of those books are really, really tough to get through. And so I think a book written for kids on that middle grade level, I think middle grade books are fantastic for everybody. One of my favorite middle grade authors is from Sydney, Australia, and the books are delightful. And it doesn't surprise me that this book is resonating with adults. And I'm so happy that it's getting out there.
Yeah, so am I. And I'm so pleased that you're interested in the book. I have to say that. I don't think I said that earlier on when we started.
Well, it's like I said, this is something, that I had to deal with. And in some ways, I think my siblings may still be dealing with it. I think I had the, I think the reason why I went and studied psychology and wanted to be a social worker when I was in college was kind of trying to figure out how to help myself. And the 10 years that I spent in human services were probably more therapeutic for me than, or hopefully, they were also therapeutic for the people I was serving. And then I got healthy and became a clown. So, But what's now that you've written, My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever, and it's resonating with folks, are we going to have to wait another 15 years for your next book to come out, your next kids' books to come out? Or are you working on something that you can tell us a little bit about?
No, it won't be that 15 years again. I'm working on a couple of books, actually. One is probably an adult book, a social history about a community that lived on an agricultural research facility. But for the kids' books, I am working on a book called Camp Koala, and it's about a group of kids who go camping with their families and find these dead koalas in the bush. And so the story is about that and why the koalas are turning up dead. But, kids being kids with vivid imaginations, they have all kinds of theories and think about the ogres and the different scary kind of people out there who could be killing the koalas.
Well,
and I won't give the ending away.
No, don't do that. But do put us on the calendar when that book is available. We'd love for you to come back on and talk about that because
sure.
Books are just such a great way for us to travel to different worlds. Worlds that we may not be able to get to right away, but we can pick up a book and take a trip to Australia and check out the koalas and who's killing the koalas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Books are fantastic to escape into another world.
They are. And we've had a number of guests here on the podcast who have talked about their own challenges growing up, whether it was being raised in an abusive foster home or being raised in a family dealing with mental illness. And so many of them have shared with us that books were their refuge. It was their place to kind of go and find some safety, but more than anything else, be able to find some hope and to turn their lives around. So I am delighted that there are people finding some hope and some understanding and some empathy through your book. Where can we find out more about the book and find out more about you?
So you can go to my website, monicashott.com. Monica spelled with a K, and it's SCHOTT. The book you can also find it anywhere online, Amazon or from my website. But there's quite a bit on my website if anyone wants to know more.
And there's a lovely snowy picture on your website. Is that Australian snow that I see there?
No chance. That's from Finland. Finland, one of the shortest days of the year. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, this has been a beautiful conversation. We're really happy that you're able to spend some time with us. We've been talking to the author of My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever, a great middle grade novel dealing with mental illness, from our guest, Dr. Monica Schott. Hey, Dr. Monica, thanks so much for being with us.
And thank you, Jed. It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please think about sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. We'd love for you to head on over to readingwithyourkids.com and take part in our Sound Lab poll. We have 2 versions of the song Best Me I Can Be. We'd love to know which version you love the best. We'd love to know which version your kids love the best. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Shannon Stocker. Please be sure to check out the Roach King of Raleigh. Also want to thank Dr. Monica Schott. Please be sure to check out My Dad Built Me the Best and Wackiest Cubby Ever. I want to thank my team, Chris Starr. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better, more caring, more empathetic place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.